Hey yo, what is it, y'all? Let's get right into it. If you're new here, welcome. If you're used to being here, welcome back. Sorry, I've been gone for a little bit. I had a bunch of videos that I was preparing to make, and I still plan on talking about those topics, but I got stuck. Not stuck because I couldn't figure out how to write them, but I got stuck because I was playing the game a whole lot. Um, I started playing the game a ton again, right? After my last video talking about the State of Sanctum, I just needed to do something different. So I put it up to my Discord, like, hey, what should I do? And a majority was like, hey, you should go to SSF. So I went to SSF, and I've been having a blast. And that's what this video today is about, to talk about that Blight of Contagion Occultist, because, well, this is a rehash of a skill that I played back in Affliction League. I played this exact build in Affliction, but I'd say I did it worse, obviously, back then. The Ascendancy and the stuff around it is better now than it was then. And I think just generally my approach was better to it this time around. So I'm actually really excited to just get to share with you guys the new stuff. First off, I have to start with the obvious. Hey, what is Blight of Contagion? Because plenty of people probably just have never heard of the skill, quite frankly. You've heard of it because you're here, but maybe you send this to somebody because you want them to see the build and they don't know. Blight of Contagion is a version of Blight that, you spray the little psh out of the cone in front of you, and it propagates down the line through Contagion. Contagion is a chaos dot skill that, when applied to a target, once they die, it will spread the contagion to nearby enemies. And so then that's really cool. And historically, that's been paired with Essence Drain. You've probably heard of EDC or ED Contagion, ED Contagion Trickster, etc. Like that. That's what this is, right? So we're just bringing it back with Blight of Contagion because, well, Blight of Contagion just does more damage than ED by a pretty large margin. Like ED characters previously used to rely on like a pseudo linked Blight or like a level 50 in order to have real single target anyways, historically. So now we just get all of it in our Blight of Contagion. We get the damage and we get the clear. And it works because that's what Blight of Contagion is. It is a lower stacking version of Blight that does more damage per layer and can propagate through Contagion. Now, in terms of direct comparison to Blight, it is worse damage. Like Blight still does roughly 65% more damage than Blight of Contagion, but it's extremely low duration compared to Blight of Contagion. Blight of Contagion has a 4 or 5 second base duration compared to Blight's 1 or 1.5 second base duration. Means that it's a lot rougher for using it for damage because you would just basically have to be perma channeling the whole time, as opposed to me doing it for the love of the game. That skill version of the skill requires it, and it doesn't have the contagion interaction that actually makes it a dominant clear skill that also like frees up link space for necessary defensive and offensive mobility options for your character. This was something that was just kind of missing for this archetype as it scaled forward, and it's massively enabled by the buffs that we got. Speaking of buffs, let's talk first about Occultist, then about Chaos Dot. Because when I heard people was doing this build, one of the things that my friends asked was like, why Occultist instead of Trickster? One, because I like Occultist. Let's just get that out the way real quick. Firmly believe having fun and doing the things you love is more important than it being optimal. It just so happens that I believe it's optimal as well. While I think Trickster has Occultist waxed in the defensive department, I think Trickster has almost every ascendancy in the game completely dominated defensively. The offensive value that Occultist supplies is very important for a build type that doesn't do that much damage. Like, unless you really just want to sit there and Quinn 69 your boss fights, I'm not into that. So I needed a way to make the skill do more damage. Occultist provides that. There's a couple things in the Ascendancy that we're talking about. One, Vile Bastion. This node got buffed. It looked weird at first when I saw the change, but I'm really, really heavy on it now. Instead of 40 regen and then like a percentage of your ES regen based on the number of things you've killed, it's just 100 flat ES regen. So you have less ES regen while you're mapping, but more when you're bossing. And that's really important. Your ability to sit there and face tank because you just have 100 ES regen now as well to go alongside any of your life recovery is really important. It really helps enable the hybrid setup that we have going on this character. Plus, there's the other thing there, which is the main reason I wanted to even do this on Occultist. Your ES is increased by your amount of spell block. That's just a percentage increase. Think of it just like clicking multiple nodes on the tree that say percentage increase maximum energy shield. So, if you have 70 spell block, that's 70% ink energy shield. And it's a pretty big deal. When I ascended to it the first time, I gained like 700 ES. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of ES, right? That's a really big deal. Then the other major reason to pick Occultist is not actually Withering Presence, the node behind the one I'm about to talk about, because you're like, oh, but it has the chaos damage and the wither. Yeah. That's all nice. Void Beacon is what really makes this ascendancy stand out to me for this build as a simple 2-pointer that has a really important line. Nearby enemies have 100% reduced life regeneration rate. And this is so important because there are just situations where low DPS builds feel horrid because enemies can recover, right? Think Maven witnessing your bosses. Think Conk Ground maps, or even just the park map boss spawning Conk Ground. The ability to completely ignore that mechanic on those fights makes you feel less bad about how low damage you are, because low damage feels really bad if the boss is actually healing through your damage, right? But they can't do that against an occultist. And those are the two major reasons to pick occultist. +1 curse and hexproof pierce obviously is nice, and obviously with their presence is really strong because it lets me not have to fit in like withering step or something else on the character. But these are the two main things that I really have to point out about occultist. Now, let's get into Chaos Dot, right? Because they did just go through and pretty much buff all the skills by roughly 20 to 25%. Very noticeable. Very much love it. Thank you, GGG. Very much appreciate it. But more importantly to me than just the damage buff raw to the skills is actually the improvement to the tree. With so they changed stuff for cold and whatnot, but for Chaos Dot in particular, they added these two new wheels. One on the left side, headed up by like I think it's called Asylum over there, and one on the right, the one on the left is by Asylum, and the one on the right is near minion instability, very close to Wand Slinger and whatnot. Those two wheels being added give me so many more uses for my points on the tree before I have to go into clusters. And granted, I'm still at the point right now where decent amounts of percentage damage on the tree are worth like 2 to 3% each. But the fact that like I've managed that used to be like 3%. 3.5% per point. And so I'm a huge fan of just having more on the tree that's worth clicking into while I'm progressing the character, because that's just a lot of extra free damage that the archetype was otherwise missing. This is like one of the biggest complaints that minion players often have when certain minions feel undertuned. It's because they just don't have enough on the tree that they could like just go click into to get more damage to pad out other problems with the build. So those were very massive changes, and the two combined, occultist changes and the Chaos Dot buffs, I mean, it was a matter of time before I played it, and what better time to play it than my reroll into SSF, which I will talk in a separate video about why I went to SSF, by the way, because I think that explanation deserves its own video and its own topic. Not because I think I'm so important that you need to know why I specifically went to SSF, but because it kind of pointed to a larger discussion topic that I've been wanting to like talk about for a while. But we'll get there at a later time. Now, let's talk about how I progressed the character, which the first thing I did is I leveled it with Spellslinger for Chaos Dot, because cast times suck in the early game, especially before I have Blight of Contagion. Blight of Contagion it's a channeling skill, right? So it's a very fast like skill to tap if I only need 1 or 2 stacks to kill something with Contagion on it, and then they like stack up together, kind of like how Poison Prolif works when the like Contagions overlap and just take the full Blight to something, and then now it's just propagating 5-stack or 6-stack Blights all the way down the line. It's beautiful. But before that, you have to use ED Contagion, and self-casting that forever feels really bad, quite frankly. So Spellslinger starting at level 24, much better. That way you can just press the wand skill, whether that be Frenzy or your basic attack, to trigger Estrogen and Soul Rend, or Estrogen and Contagion together, and then you'll pick up Soul Rend at level 28, and the whole like setup really comes together at that point. You know, have Bane for your curse and all that nonsense right there, right? Other thoughts about Spellslinger, by the way, just from playing with it. Going back to 20% reserve per skill feels incredible. Really needed that. I'm going to probably experiment with this for full builds later on in the league, potentially in like the next month, who knows? Because I do think it has potential, but it definitely falls off for a dot build because it's just a non-support on an archetype that relies so much on its gems to actually get any value in the first place. Now, one of the immediate thoughts, like if you're thinking about playing Spellslinger soon, I want to put this in your mind. You need to figure out how to deal with your survivability if you're down that much mana reservation. I feel like we still solve a lot of our survivability problems through things like Grace, Determ. This character's using a combination of Arctic Armor, Flesh and Stone, and Tempest Shield. That's 75% mana reservation that's being used on things to try to keep me alive. Do be cognizant of this and think about a way to like how you're going to solve your defenses if you can't do it that way, because the last time Spellslinger was truly played was before Scourge League and before defensive stats and defensive reservations were really all that popular in the game. So be wary of that. That said, once I finish leveling and I get to the end of the campaign, I go farm out my Blight of Contagion from Merc Lab. I got extremely lucky. I would have kept going until I got it anyways, but I got it in 2. So we love to see that for myself. Then we go into maps. And there's a couple things that I want to like talk about here from my progression path from start of maps to where we are now, which we are fully done with all of the quest bosses and whatnot. And now we're just actually setting up my farming and whatnot. And there's a couple things that I felt were really, really important to just note here before we go in game. One, Tempest Shield, Arctic Armor, and Flesh of Stone are an incredibly cool, strong trio of 25% reservations, which with just a little bit of reservation efficiency that I have on the tree allows me to also fit in Malevolence as my debt reservation, which if you really wanted to, that could be the term, that could be Grace. It could even be this one if you really, really wanted to go like full defensive. But for me, Malevolence was definitely the option there. 2, find a way to recover your ES. It's super important because you'll see I've got a ton of ES. And it's something that you definitely want to be able to recover in combat. I didn't think about using something like Wicked Ward as my current solution until a little bit later than I should have. And I definitely should have figured out a way to force in Vault Discipline is what it is. I was being lazy. And I've done it since doing the Force Stone, but I wasn't sure up until then how I do it. So I'll talk about that when we actually go in game, because my in-game does not reflect exactly what's in the PoB for when I killed the bosses, because I've played just a little bit since getting the kills last night. Also, things like Divine Shield. Divine Shield is really strong if you have good block and a decent bit of armor on the character. It just requires the tree to shift a little bit more left, and I think that's only really an option for me once I've gotten the clusters, but I'm not entirely sure. The ES Regen Mastery is fine if you take a second ES wheel. I think the Chaos Damage Bypass one is more important, but you can get it there. You can get a chest mod or a belt mod or both crafted on that give you 150 ES regen each. That's also really nice for recovering your ES. And that just helps because then if you're recovering your ES at the same time you're covering your life through things like Vitality, through things like Recoup, you're going to be able to then have effectively 2 sources of recovery. It's just like stacking them together all together, like realistically. Again, except against chaos damage, but you know, it is what it is. So much you can do against that. Speaking of stacking recoveries, it's very worth noting that stacking different types of recovery is pretty effective, just like it is to stack multiple types of like defensive mitigation, right? You know, I have block and Tempest Shield stuff, right? And then in addition, I have Flesh and Stone and Arctic Armor for their percent mitigations, right? And then I'm looking for things like PDR on my chest, or I'm thinking about the, thinking about endurance charges or other ways to get endurance charges, like endurance charge on block from deflection or something, right? There are a number of ways to like layer your defenses up, and layering your ways to recover is also very important, especially for map mod purposes, just in case, you are feeling lazy. Maybe it's like, I block less, so I recover less that way, but I do still have my recoup and my regen going, right? Because I have recoup, regen, and life/ES on block. Not a lot of life and ES on block, and that's one of the big things that I really want to get into the character if I'm still on this build by the time I need it. But we'll talk about that in a moment once we get to I want to go in game and actually show you guys the character. Side note, thank you for listening this far. If you've already watched this far, if you want to see this character when I'm playing it live or anything like that, I do stream. It's not a whole lot. I've streamed just like on the weekends, couple hours. It's not like a major thing. It's not like a big thing or anything, but I always appreciate the support. Just love to hang out. And it's just another way for me to like record footage and show what I've got going on, but in a more raw format, in case you want to see me like actually solve the problems that this character has gone through. Unfortunately, all of the recording for this character was done so far was done mostly off stream, just because I started it on Monday and I have had a busier week than I would like, so I wasn't able to actually like go live. But that will change starting tomorrow. I'll be back live again. So check it out, right? Now let's get in game so I can actually show you details of the character and some other things that I want to like talk about. All right, let's get in game real quick. Let me show you some stuff, right? One, let's see. We'll start with the stat screen, right? Bang, stat screen. 91, which this is a much more recent development. I've been struggling to figure out the XP stuff because a lot of the defensive stuff I figured out was just kind of on the fly as I was having problems keeping my character alive so I could get more XP. It's okay though. We thug it out anyways. We get it done. You'll notice again, like I mentioned earlier in the video, a lot of ES to work with. It's a lot higher than in the PoB because I've recently improved my chest piece. Like that was one of the few things I've done recently is like actually get a real chest. Still not incredible, but it's good enough for now. Other things of note, this wand, if you're playing this character, this wand is almost entirely like quote deterministic. I don't like using that word, but let me just talk. It's very, very approachable and easy to make. This is an eye level 5 wand. You can take a character fresh off the strand, Go kill, or fresh off the strand, you kill Hillick, you walk into town, you buy out all of the Driftwood wands from Lily. Those should be low enough eye level to be spammed with Essence of Woe and have a 1 in 6 to hit any +1 level. But it's 1 in 6 for any of the +1s. So then, I have one that's like, I have like a Phase 1 and a Lightning one lying around somewhere. But I got this in like 9 or 10 instances. I was prepared to go to 30 if I needed to for this because it is that much of an important upgrade. But this wand is very, very potent once you have the essences to make it. Very worth making once you can afford to make it. And then you just craft on Chaos.multi. If it hits Chaos.multi initially from like when it gets the +1, and already you can just craft on like cast speed or percentage cast damage suffix or something instead. Damage over time prefix, whatever you need. Just, add more stats to it. That's important thing number 1. The amulet's made by reforging chaos until I hit +1. Unironically, that's what I did. Harvest is my friend because I'm an SSF. You can do better if you're not an SSF though. So do your thing. Then there's a lot of other just like miscellaneous gear and other options. Here you'll see this is the chest craft I was talking about, regen ES while there's a rare unique nearby. I unfortunately do not also have it on my belt, although I noticed that I have this really bad life regen roll and I have some wasted recovery. I was looking at this earlier this morning. I'm probably going to try to get that taken care of so that I can get the ES regen craft here. One big thing also for getting this character is getting a good shield. A good shield, by the way, here is defined by life, necessary resistances, and chance to block, like actual attack block. Something that's really noteworthy about playing a block character as a caster is that all of the block nodes, if I just go on the tree here, you'll notice there's like a divide in the block, right? All the block stops like right about here on the tree, right? All this is the only attack block for shields available. It's this little bit here where you grab this side here and here. 7% attack block for shield. And then the shield mastery. That's all the block you're going to get in this part of the tree. If you were like up here, you're looking for attack block. Because all of this is spell block. And this is just block recovery. This is spell block. This is spell block. Spell block. Let's see. This is attack block, but it's for stays. We're not a staff build. We're not crit. This is dual wield. Like, you don't get attack block. The attack block nodes are all the way down here. So to mitigate that, you need to get a shield with a good block roll on it. This mod you can craft on the block mod. I got it through, I slammed an essence on this shield when it had a bunch of memory strands on it. It ate all the memory strands and gave me this beautiful shield. So we take those, right? But very important not to prioritize. My rings are standard. I have minus cost on them because it just helps. I realized that like maybe 2 hours ago that I could put it on, so I don't actually need clarity anymore. But I'm probably going to keep it on anyways until I can think of a better use for the gem socket. Speaking of better use of the gem socket, not having a guard skill kind of sucks, and that could definitely be a better use for said gem socket, right? So be aware of that. I think that's everything I actually really wanted to show in the gear section. There's not a whole lot to like look at gear wise. Tree wise, you'll see that like I'm sprawled all over the place grabbing all my damage nodes. It's over here and it's up here and it's over there. Oh, this is not life nodes. These are defensive and whatnot, but they're still really good. And then over here and over here. Yeah, it's a mess. This gets more condensed if I ever go like a cluster here, like just the one off to maybe clean up this particular section here. This probably get this plus something else might get replaced with a medium or so, like a large and 2 mediums if again I stay on this character for that long. Otherwise, not a whole lot to talk about there, but you'll see the investment in the multiple different things, right? Recoup investment. I have the block stuff, which includes like the block here and whatnot. And something related to this is that I don't actually have an anoint right now because there are no good damage anoints for this build for me. But we're going to anoint something defensive once I do enough blight. It's either going to be an aggressive bastion for cheap. Deflection is a really nice one. It gives the endurance charge on block, but I can get endurance charge on kill here. And it's just a matter of how much I think I need the endurance charge on like bosses. Can also go Tetsuda. This is like life on block, which is really nice for the raw recovery value. And it also gives it gives more block than defensive aggressive bastion, but I think I want aggressive bastion for the what do you call it? For the endurance charge on kill. There's also as the mountain. You have a lot of different options for block based things, and that seemed to be like the best use of my anoint slot when I get there. Gem stuff, not a whole lot to cover here. These are pretty standard links. You can see them in the PoB. Something of note, running Arcane Surge in your main link is not necessary. I'm doing it because I really just like having Arcane Surge on the character anyways. It's if I'm going to have Arcane Surge sourced to my character in the first place, running the support is just a no-brainer because it's one of my best slot supports. I get my Arcane Surge from Frostblink. Early on, I was getting it from Contagion until I decided that I actually wanted to put item rarity support in because that does work. This is a really funny thing where Contagion scores kill credit for the skills that you use for things that you kill, and so this is just rare. This is just extra rarity if you can afford the socket for it. But like moving Arcane Surge over, taking Clarity out opens up 2 sockets, and that's like Castman damage taken Immortal Call or Automation Steel Skin if you would feel more safe or more comfortable playing with that, right? Otherwise, there's not a lot special going on in the gem links or anything. It's really just, I think it's a really straightforward build. I'm a really big fan of the fact that this build can be played appropriately as pretty much a one skill build. Like not one skill as in like one button, but rather like instead of like the usual dot method where you're scaling like 2 to 3 skills worth of damage, like the majority of the damage really is just Blight of Contagion. And the Bane is here to apply curses, and it does a little bit of damage on its own, but it's here for the curses. And Contagion is here for the AoE, not its own damage, right? Like this feels really good to me to play it this way. Now, as far as going forward, I mentioned that I need an anoint. I also probably just want to get this neck to have dot multi as well before I do so. We'll see how that goes. I want the regen craft on my belt. I do kind of want Dawnbreaker, but I don't know if it's necessary. The math on whether or not I'd rather have other stats or Fizz taking his fire is kind of like iffy on both sides, like which would I rather it be. So I haven't really decided there yet. And then otherwise, what's really up next is actually farming, right? Because I'm done with all the quest stuff, right? As you can see here, I have the fancy Rose Petal Atlas. I've done, you know, my quest points and stuff. I still need to do like some like favorite slots and stuff, but that can take a backseat to like farming and gearing and all that other stuff. So I'm actually farming for a respec to FR of Soulsack so that I can like really like push into farming like the harder content, the T17s and stuff, because this build most likely will ceiling at about like if I were to really try to push it, probably ceiling around 3 to 5 million DPS, just because I'd want to maintain its tankiness in the process. And I would rather invest in a character that easily eclipses 20 and therefore turns farming all the other stuff into like a much more of a breeze, so that I can start to push into other much more cooler build concepts once I'm done with that. That's everything for me here. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. You know, also, you know, there's a Discord, all that good stuff in the description. You know, check it all out. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you in the next one. Peace.